Hey GBA fans, it's your friend Choice CJ here, and welcome back to Week 6 of the Pick'em Crew. I have finally returned after being extremely busy within real life stuff, moving and traveling the past few weeks. It's great to be back. Unfortunately, my good buddy Gregulator was not available, but we were able to find a very suitable replacement. It should be familiar to you all. It is Turbo. Say hello.
Yo guys, with one man out again, one man in, one man out. Greg's gone after CJ's come back, but I'm ready and here to start talking about last week's picks. So CJ, why don't you take us into that?
So going over the Week 5 picks, nothing too crazy happening. We did have everyone pick the Giantes over the Chew, everyone picking the Girachiefs over the Melbourne Rotoms. The big upset last week was the San Jose Sharpedos, coached by Coach Tom Z, and he was able to get a nice 5-0 Como-O sweep over his good buddy Monotui and the Tampa Bay Lux Rays. And yeah, that was the big upset last week. Any big surprises for you?
I mean, I called the big surprise that everyone didn't get. I did say Tom would beat Mono, so that's a thing. I thought Lars would do better against Joey, but otherwise, a pretty standard week. I think I did pretty well in terms of picks. This week, you won't see me picking. I am just going to comment on what Greg and CJ have picked because... spoilers, Tom shouted at me for picking, so that's fine. But we can roll into week one's matchups.
Yo, what's going on, GBA fans? It's Sock here with this week's Discord pick'ems. This week, the fan Discord has decided to lock the Kansas City Girachiefs over the Detroit Steelwings. They've decided to pick the San Jose Sharpedos to beat the Milwaukee Bears, the Florida Gators to beat the Victorian Shadow, the New Orleans Pelipers to beat the Montreal Habsouls, the Philadelphia Scissors over the Tampa Bay Lux Rays, the Borussia Donphan over the Columbus Chew. The Kansas City Girachiefs over the Detroit Steelwings, again, is their lock. And they've also picked the San Diego Gym Chargers over the Melbourne Rotoms, and last but certainly not least, the Bronx Bearticks over the San Francisco Giantes. Those are this week's pick'ems.
Speaking of Tom, and that's the San Jose Sharpedos versus the Milwaukee Bears. Yeah, why don't you talk about this matchup straight up?
This is an interesting matchup. The Sharpedos are obviously coming off a really big win last week, and they have some things in their favor in terms of matchup. Like, you look at Wolfy's team and just how slow it is. He did recently pick up the Absol to give him a little bit of speed, but otherwise Landorus outspeeds 10 of the 11 Mons on Wolfy's team, and SDZ Lando is one of the best wall breakers in the game, and people talk about how hard Wolfy's team is to break. Well, I think you probably have your answer there. In addition, the fact that Wolfy relies a lot on bulk means he can be prone to Volt Turn abuse. So it'll be interesting to see if Tom can take advantage of that. On the flip side, the Bewares have some threats of their own. SD Absol can be really scary here, just with a combination of Dark coverage and Fairy coverage. Trick Room, once again, is looking really nice. Something like a Reuniclus with Psychic coverage, Fighting coverage, and then Hidden Power Fire for Scizor can go in. And I just feel like Wolfy in this sort of situation is going to find some sort of cheeky way to catch Tom off guard. That's just the type of player he is. He's very creative. If you've been watching his channel recently, he's been kind of changing the meta in VGC with his Mega Steelix team. So he'll find something like that, I think, to catch Tom off guard. And so I'm going in favor of Wolfy this week.
I mean, really interestingly, both you and Greg are the only analysts, oh, actually no, and for us, that have picked the Milwaukee Bears to actually beat Tom. I do think that there is one set that will prevail over all if Wolfy does go and beat Tom. I think a Guts Conk under Trick Room with dual punching moves and a Mach Punch plus Drain Punch can really hurt Tom's team if played incorrectly. I think Tom overall with the Roserade pivot and the Landorus, like you said, may come through for a win. It is very effective, but he does have to watch out for that Conk because that could be a massive problem. But just since I'll do the formality right now, since Greg isn't here, I've got to ask you to put "oh gosh" in the comments for Greg because he's going to be upset if I don't say it. But let's just jump straight into the next week's matchup, which obviously is the Victoria Shadows versus the Florida Gators. What do you think? Because in the pick'ems, it's a clean sweep for Gator in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to agree. Obviously, I did pick Gator in this game. For Necro Stevo, like, the biggest threat on his team, like, this is going to sound funny, but, like, I think Trick Room Executor actually is pretty potent, just with Dual Stab plus Earthquake. Earthquake is going to help hit the Heat Train and things like that, which would otherwise resist the Dual Stab. besides that, I think that the matchup really favors Gator. He's got good checks for the rock-type threats on Necrostevo's team. Like, Buzzwole is able to pretty easily deal with the combination of T-Tar and Lycanroc. Drapion is about the best check you can get for Mega Zam, besides maybe like Alolan Muck or something like that. And then I really like Mamoswine's matchup here. If you just run Dual Stab plus Ice Shard plus Rock Slide, pretty much nothing switches in. And then in the late game, I am looking for Mega Altaria to potentially put in a sweep. The only fairy resists on Necrostevo's team are the Metagross and the Rotom. Metagross can be a little bit of an issue, but obviously the Altaria gets Earthquake coverage, and Rotom Heat is just not a reliable fairy switch in because it's easily worn down by Stealth Rocks. So I think Gator is pretty favored.
I do agree with that. I think that the only thing you kind of missed out there is the fact that using Crobat as a pivot in this game is really going to help him get those threats in. Like you said, Lankarok just isn't strong enough to break a Buzzwole down, even though it can have coverage for it in the same way Tyranitar just isn't strong enough. It's not even fast enough to beat a Drain Punching or a Super Powering Buzzwole. So I think Gator's got the matchup really, really solidly here, along with the fact that the Shadows have not been in great form at all. But again, two teams, speaking of not great form, that aren't in great form, each of them is the New Orleans Pelipers and the Montreal Habsols. Both teams that aren't in great form. I think Astor, if he doesn't bring a Cresselia check, is in big trouble. But I think Astor's smart enough not to not bring a Cresselia check because he did use it in the D-League, if I remember correctly. And so he knows what a big threat that is. Speed Boost Scully is looking like a really, really good win con for him in this game. I think that if he uses it correctly, it's a very, very good way of taking out big threats on John's team. What do you think?
The big threats on Astor's team obviously are the Lopunny and the Scolipede. But I think that John's in a good position where he's got two of the best checks to those things. Obviously, the Crest is one of the best Lop checks in the game. And then a Scavalier is a very difficult one for Scolipede to deal with. So if he brings that and then preserves it properly, it's going to be difficult to get off a sweep. I guess with like a +2 Tectonic Rage or something like that, maybe that could do a little bit of damage, but it remains to be seen. Helmet Chomp on John's side I think is very annoying for Astor to deal with because it does do damage to the Lopunny, Scolipede, Darmanitan, etc. It also weakens a U-turning Zapdos if he chooses to bring that. Other things that I like on Astor's end, Sylveon with the Choice Specs actually looks really nice. John likes his sort of fat mons. You know, he's got the Crest and the Serena and things like that. But a simple spec Sylveon set with Hybrid Voice, Psyshock, and Hidden Power Fire can definitely do work. But I don't think that's going to be enough to overcome John. And like you said, John's had some off weeks this season. But I do expect him to put it together and be able to defeat Astor this week.
Yeah, I think that was the general consensus across the analysts, with only the confusion picking the Habsols and the confusion obviously being notorious for his interesting picks. But we'll move on to the next one, which is probably will be the game of the week, I think, this week, being Chimpak and Mono against each other facing off. I think Mono needs to desperately watch out for a DD Scrafty with P-Jab. If that comes, I think the Mono with a very, very standard team could fall down to that. I think it's a really cool random bring that he could also bring. I think that the Trick Room threat with Victini could be a problem again for Mono, but Mono could just bring a DD Zard or a setup Zard, and that could also just run through Chimp's team if Chimp doesn't prepare properly for it. So I think it's a really, really even matchup, and I can see why the pick'ems are split this week on this one. You went with Chimpact on this one, so why do you think Chimpact's got the edge?
Yeah, in terms of the team matchup, like you said, it's extremely even, and they're both very talented battlers. I just feel like Chimp, sort of time and time again, has proven that his ability to prep and his ability to execute is a tier above. And like even someone who's as good as Mono has to, is going to have a hard time with that. In terms of the Mons that could be that are on my watch list, I think Zard is looking really scary versus Chimp. There's not a whole lot on his team that can resist the dual coverage, so he's going to have to run some sort of Akaberry on something like Tapu Bulu, or maybe a Haban Berry on Guzzlord, or something cheeky like that. Otherwise, just like a bulky T-Wave Uxie is going to be his main response, and then like a Scarf Nihilego to revenge kill a +1 Zard. But the problem with Uxie is that it's easily pressured by Keldeo, and you can kind of say the same thing for Nihilego. On Chimp's side, it's funny. I think actually this could be a really nice week for Slurpuff. The only thing that can really stop a +6 Slurpuff on Mono's team is a Choppleberry Registeel. So we'll have to see if that comes out. But yeah, just for me, it's not even so much about the teams. It's just that I think that Chimp is going to be able to build the right team to take on Mono, and because he's demonstrated that over and over. You know, he's 5-0 in this season, and he'll find a way to make it work.
So you've got Chimps keeping the undefeated record. That's really, really interesting. Now, let's see if the Columbus Chew versus the Borussia Dortmund continues the Columbus Chew's losing record. Now, Coach Z has made some transfers as of, I believe, last week. Some transfers that he probably should have made at least week 2 because they've significantly improved the team. Improved his team enough to beat Lars? The answer is no. Contrary to what the confusion thinks, the Chew are not taking this game.
I respect the bold pick, but at the same time, maybe this isn't the time.
No. I think that Lurantis looks surprisingly good in this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if it comes off with a sweep, because if set up correctly and Coach Z plays terribly around it, he just has no checks to it. Kieran Black just completely tears his team apart outside of Excadrill in the sand, and even then a berry is not too far off reach for that Kieran Black as well. I mean, I could see the trades coming in handy, and if Sand is played well and he doesn't have to bring Sandstorm Sneasel anymore, that could be a thing, but I don't think Coach Z is coming through with anything but another L this week. Sorry if you're watching, Coach Z, please don't hate me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like, Sandrill is definitely a threat in this matchup. Like, the Lurantis and the Finny are going to have to be preserved just in case, so that way you can take a hit from that Excadrill if needed. But otherwise, like, the typings that Lars has is really nice. It makes it hard for Manaphy to run a good moveset. It definitely doesn't have the ability to run Z Rain Dance or anything like that. And, like, even if it just runs a simple Tail Glow set, I don't think it could run 3 coverage moves to hit everything super effectively. And as you pointed out, Kieran Black is just so good offensively here. And I'll also mention that Crocodile is very dangerous in this matchup, and I think Coach Z is going to have to bring a very offensive team to contend with that. But that's just not quite... I mean, with the Sand component, his team is a little bit better for that. But he still has things like the P2, the Celebi, the Weezing that just don't do well in that sort of matchup. So I just don't think he's going to be able to put the pieces together to take on Lars.
Yeah, that's completely fair enough. We're talking about this is a strange week for the confusion, because he's gone and locked Crimson against Jolt. I think that's an interesting decision, if I do say so myself, but I think Jolt has a massive advantage in his like skill in prep. Crimson is in 3 leagues at the moment, and therefore his prep has got to be spread across those. Jolt is concentrating solely on the GBA. I think it's going to give him a massive advantage. The one thing that comes into Crimson's favor, I do think, is his Thundy Eye. He's used it excellently the whole season, and it's up there in the kill leads in the MVP race, and it's got a very good matchup against Jolt's team with the right coverage. So I think that could be interesting, but it has to be played almost impeccably for him to come out with any sort of result from this game. I just see Jolt completely taking this game in prep, and it being a simple 3-0, 4-0 win just from prep alone, I think.
Yeah, the Thundy Eye is one of the best performing mons this season. Once again, Crimson having a kill leader. Last season it was Cobalion, and now it's the Thunderous Eye. So he definitely knows how to make these sweepers work. Versus Jolt's team, I think the combination of like Hydreigon, Venusaur, and Seismitoad will be enough to keep Thundy in check, because there's no way it can run enough coverage to deal with all of those things put together. And I think in general, Jolt's, just with the type of bulk that he has on his team, is going to be able to deter the Volt Turn shenanigans that Crimson has. On the offensive side for Jolt, Hydreigon's looking really fierce. Because really the only Dragon Resist is Rachi, if I'm not mistaken, and that obviously gets blown back by Dark Pulse. So that could be a major issue. I do think that Crimson's got a few offensive threats on his own with the Infernape, and also Lycanroc is nice, just because the only rock resists are the Seismitoad and also Breloom. And like Breloom's, I guess, you know, he brought that bulk up, fully Fizz Def Breloom versus Joey, and that worked well. But in general, Breloom's not defensive. But I still just got to give the edge to Jolt. It's you know, he's proven that he's one of the top, if not the very top battler this season. So I'm not picking against him until someone beats him.
Did someone say contention for the top battler? Yes, we are looking at Envy's pick'ems this week. The Melbourne Rotoms are coming up against Envy this week, and it's just not looking good for them. Electric Spam versus a Rain team. is not looking good overall, especially when your electric resist, one of your main electric resists is Kartana. It's not looking good, and I can see why Envy's got a clean sweep here. The combination of Tapu Koko plus Alolan Raichu and electric terrain is just going to blow back Aaron's team. There's not much he can do about it. Envy has a very, very good matchup, especially with a Moongus in the back as well. It's just going to completely counter anything Aaron tries to bring. And I'll be very, very, very surprised if Aaron takes this win, irrespective of how good a player is. I think it's just one of those games where at team preview, Envy is just going to take the win if he's brought the right team, and there's not much you can do about it. I sense you agree with me with the fact that you've also chosen.
Yeah, Alolan Raichu is just so amazing in this matchup. Like, the only check, I guess, is Sliggoo, if that counts, because what does Sliggoo really do back to Raichu? On the Rotom side, something like Mimikyu can be extremely annoying. Like, that's one of the only things that can slow down an Alolan Raichu sweep, because it does have the Disguise, and then it can smack it with a super effective Shadow Claw. Other things that are kind of cheeky, like a Life Orb Heliolisk can abuse the electric terrain from Envy, and because it has surf coverage plus potential rain to boost it, it can snipe the only real good electric check on his team, which is Gligar. But yeah, otherwise you pretty much summed it up. Electric terrain boosted Alolan Raichu is going to crush. There's some other interesting threats, like Gator is a little bit difficult for Erin to deal with, and I think Pinsir can be pretty good, just because the flying resists are not that great on Erin's team, but, you know, it's somewhat mitigated by the fact that Kartana and Swampert can both tank a quick attack and revenge it afterwards. So, yeah, just got to give it to Envy here. Just the matchup is really, really tough.
Yeah, that's completely fair enough, but we're going to finish on one of the IDM crews versus one of the sort of veterans of the GBA. We have Geo versus Joey this week. I think there's a very, very interesting reason as to why Geo and Joey have split this week's pick'ems, because you wouldn't think so from either team's records. I think it's because Joey very much struggles to find consistency this season in the same way of Geo does, because Geo has a very, very good draft. Joey has a sort of okay draft, but can't string wins together, and I think this is going to be a case for it again. I think a well-played Gyarados plus Zygarde should do the job against Geo's team, don't get me wrong, but you should never count out a well-played Mew, because Mew is obviously the most versatile one in format, and I don't think that Geo can be counted up just solely on that. I think that Joey has been completely underwhelming this season. I think that if he takes an L in this game, he's going to really struggle for playoffs. I think that that's the reason why people may see a split in Joey's picks instead of clean flushes like Chimp or Envy perhaps get, because there's no doubt he's on par with them in terms of playing skill. It's just that he's completely not strong wins together this season. I think that Mew versus the Gyara Zygarde core is the main battle of the 6v6 this week. What do you think?
Yeah, I do like Mew in this matchup. Like, it's going to be tough. We're going to have to see if Geo is pressured to bring a defensive Mew to deal with 1,000 Arrows, because besides Shaman, he doesn't have great responses to 1,000 Arrows. But I really like a bulk up set this week. Something similar to what Jolt ran in the D League, like a bulk up with Leech Life, Drain Punch, and probably Zen Headbutt. Actually plows through Joey's team. We'll have to see if something like that comes. It's funny, like both of these teams now have like pretty great trappers. The Magnezone is pressured to come because it can deal with Scizor, but the Magnezone is deterred by Geo's Dugtrio. So there's going to be some interesting mind games going on there that I'm excited for. One thing that you mentioned, like Joey has, he's shown that he's reliant on setup from Zygarde and Gyarados, and he particularly likes substitute sets. It's going to deter Ditto shenanigans, because obviously it can't copy the stats if the Pokemon is behind a substitute, so we'll have to see if something like that comes. This is going to be a really great one. I just think that Geo has, shown that he's got good experience in the format. Joey is, as you mentioned, one of the most talented battlers on YouTube, but it just seems like he's still getting comfortable right now with the team and with GBA. He's sort of been out of action for a little while. Geo has shown that, he knows what it takes to win these tough games. It's like what he did last season. He won like the last 6 games of the season to make playoffs. So I'm putting my faith in Geo.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I think that one thing that I didn't bring up was the fact that Joey has that added dynamic of having Matty Brolic and Gypsy King helping him in his prep, which is huge considering they're two of the big Goliaths in draft format. So that's always an added advantage. But then again, if you look at Geo's performances versus MV and Chimpact, you could argue each of them deserve the win in itself. So when he plays Joey, maybe it's going to come third time lucky. You never know. But I think that's brought us to the end of our Pick'ems video for this week. Make sure you leave your Pick'ems in the comments below. Also drop an oh gosh for Greg, considering he's not here, and an oh gosh for me, just because if you like me and you want me back, make sure you tell Tom about that. But I'll leave CJ to close it off because I've said my bit.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you again for joining me. This has been great fun. You've provided great insights. And as Turbo mentioned, make sure you drop your pick'ems down below. Make sure you sub to the GBA channel as well to stay up to date on all of the latest analyst videos. We drop lots of videos each week. And of course, make sure you check out all of our fantastic coaches so you can stay up to date on all of the weekly action. So on behalf of both of us, thank you guys for watching. And until the next time, we'll see you guys later.